May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Again, happy Mother's Day. And happy Good Shepherd Sunday. I'm very happy and pleased to be back from a sojourn in Scotland on this day to celebrate motherhood in all its many forms and to worship our divine Good Shepherd with all of you. Mother's Day and Good Shepherd Sunday both invite us to ask the question, how can we help give birth to new life within our families and our communities and within the Christian church that is in such desperate need of new birth and new life? It's actually not that often that Good Shepherd Sunday and Mother's Day fall on the same day. It only happens every 7 to 10 years or so. So I personally appreciate this alignment, this liturgical alignment. I appreciate this because it invites me to reflect with all of you on a particular Celtic saint who is associated with both motherhood and sheep. It's very appropriate, isn't it? A saint who I came to know a bit more intimately during my recent Celtic Christian pilgrimage to Scotland, and a saint who also asks us, how can we help give birth to new life? The saint is one of the 3 patron saints of Ireland. We all know one of these 3 because we celebrated his feast day a few weeks ago. His feast day fell on a Sunday this year, a Sunday during Lent. St. Patrick, who was actually born in Britain, but then went to Ireland as a missionary and became the apostle to the Irish. The second patron saint of Ireland was born in Ireland. And I'd be surprised if any of you know who he is, but some of you might, especially those who are at the 8 a.m. service. Saint Columba. Saint Columba was born in Ireland in 521 AD and then traveled up north in 563 AD to a little island in the Hebrides, a little island called Iona, where I was just last week. And on Iona, St. Columba established his monastery and his mission outpost where he successfully evangelized all of Scotland. He's the apostle to Scotland, the Irish apostle to Scotland. And the beautiful and mystical and wild island of Iona remains a central hub for Celtic Christianity today. And it might be my favorite place in the world. After Humboldt County, of course. That's a close second. Now, the third patron saint of Ireland is who I want to talk about today. That's a woman. That is the beloved Saint Brigid of Kildare, who lived from around 450 to 525 AD. Now, Brigid was born to a Christian mother and a Celtic father who was a druid. And so Brigid came to embody the amazing integration of Celtic Christianity and pre-Christian Celtic spirituality. One of the reasons why Christian evangelism was so successful in the British Isles was because the Christian missionaries found creative ways to appreciate and integrate Celtic wisdom with Christianity, rather than simply destroying the pre-Christian cultures. I wish the same could be said about many of the missionaries to North America who generally failed to appreciate and integrate Native American wisdom with Christianity. Brigid is in fact named after a pre-Christian Celtic earth goddess. And she may have been a priestess of this earth goddess before she converted to Christianity. Some even argue that the name Britain is connected to or comes from the name Brigid, because so many of the inhabitants of Britain worshipped the goddess Brigid before Christianity arrived. Britain may have been named after a Celtic earth goddess. So even Brigid's name conveys this integration of wisdom. It is partly for this reason that Brigid is also the patron saint of midwives, because she helped give birth to the gospel. She helped give birth to the Christ mystery in the British Isles. So on this Mother's Day and Good Shepherd Sunday, St. Brigid invites us to ask ourselves, how can we help give birth to new life? How can we help give birth to new life within our families, in our communities, and within this church? Each of us will have our own unique responses to this question. But the life of St. Brigid offers some very powerful practices to help us become spiritual midwives and mothers and good shepherds. Good shepherds who can revive souls and give birth to new life where it is so desperately needed. This morning I want to offer just 3 ways that St. Brigid helps us to practice spiritual midwifery and good shepherding. It's important to remember that we ourselves don't give birth. God gives birth through us. Our job is to create the best possible conditions for the miracle of new life to take place within us and through us and around us. One way we can do this is by letting go of a scarcity mindset. Letting go of a scarcity mindset and by trusting in abundance. Operating out of an abundant mindset. A mindset of abundance. St. Brigid was known for generously and freely giving away her parents' milk and cheese and butter to people who were hungry. She lived on a dairy farm. And although her parents would obviously get upset with her, they couldn't remain angry for very long, because every time Brigid gave food away, it would always be miraculously replenished. Sometimes double the amount would come back to her, miraculously. And Brigid especially loved serving poor people beer. And if there was no beer around, she would actually turn water into beer. Jesus turned water into wine. Brigid turned water into beer. And the Irish Christians like to think she turned the water into Guinness, the best Guinness. And she's known for this quote, this saying, "I want to give God a lake of beer, and every drop would be a prayer." And according to one popular Celtic legend, Brigid grew up on the island of Iona, an island in the Hebrides, which is this archipelago of about 100 islands in northwest Scotland. The name Hebrides means Islands of Brigid. Islands of Bride. Bride is one of the names for Brigid. According to this popular legend, one night while Brigid was sleeping, 2 angels came and picked her up and carried her back in time to Bethlehem, where she served as a bartender at an inn. You gotta love the Celtic imagination. While she was there, a young couple came in, but the only thing Brigid had to offer was a cup of water and some bread, some bannock bread, some Scottish bread, which she was eating. But Brigid decided to operate not out of a scarcity mindset, but rather out of a sense of abundance. So she gave her bread and water to this young couple. Then right after doing so, the bread and water did what? They replenished themselves miraculously. She then quickly realized that this young couple was expecting and was in desperate need of a warm and safe place to give birth. Brigid knew there were no rooms available in the inn, so she put into practice another important discipline, creative hospitality. As someone who grew up tending her parents' sheep and cattle, Brigid knew that the animal's manger would serve as a warm and safe place for this young couple to give birth. So according to the Celtic Christians, it was St. Brigid's idea for Joseph and Mary to sleep in the manger. And it was Brigid who served as the midwife to the Christ child. Isn't that beautiful? This colorful and creative legend about St. Brigid teaches us the importance of operating out of a sense of abundance, not scarcity, and of practicing creative hospitality. Two disciplines that help create the conditions for new life to be born among us. Trust in abundance and practicing creative hospitality. Another condition that is absolutely necessary for new life to emerge is the warmth of a close and loving community. A family like this here. St. Brigid tended the perpetual fire at her monastery in Kildare, where everyone in the monastery and in the surrounding village would often gather to enjoy the warmth of the hearth and of each other. And this practice actually continued for centuries in the homes of Celtic Christians, and it was always the mothers of the household who performed the ritualistic tending and smoring of each fire in the spirit and tradition of Brigid. The Celtic Christians knew and know that healthy new life can only emerge within the warmth of a loving community. Another reason why I appreciate the fact that today is Good Shepherd Sunday is because I saw more sheep these last couple weeks than I have in my entire life. There were at least 100 sheep on this tiny island of Iona, and the Hebridean Islands and Highlands seem to be teeming with sheep and lambs, especially this time of year. Although I really didn't notice many shepherds, I did certainly notice many very energetic border collies. Dogs who have been especially bred to herd sheep. Dogs who function as good shepherds. The leader of the pilgrimage, Celtic Christian author John Philip Newell, told us about his border collie named Joe, J-O, which is Gaelic for spark of life. John Philip said, "The instinct for oneness is within all things, but it is particularly developed in the border collie." John Philip explained how much Joe loved and lived for Pilgrimage Day, a day when the pilgrims walk about 9 miles on this tiny island. Because this day gave Joe the opportunity to round up people all day long. He would be almost berserk with ecstasy as he was running around all the pilgrims. And at one point on Pilgrimage Day, we walk in silence. It was beautiful. We would spend some time walking and chatting, and then we'd pause for a little bit, have some prayers and some chants, and then we'd walk in silence together. At this one point on the pilgrimage, we walked in silence to the ruins of a fairly ancient hermit cell. When we got there, we sat in a circle, silently. And that is when Joe would come into the center of the circle and lie down and go to sleep. And John Philip said, of course he would go to sleep. His work was done. He had us in a circle. Joe, the border collie, functioned as the good shepherd who did his job of bringing people together, creating oneness and community, which is absolutely necessary for healthy new life to emerge. And this oneness is not conformity, but rather different people with different perspectives coming together in love and warmth and joy around the hearth. St. Brigid's feast day is the same day as an ancient Gaelic holiday known as Emolc. Emolc. which is in February, the time of year when the mother sheep, the ewes, give birth to baby lambs. Emok means in the belly or in the womb. Some people think that's where you get the word milk, emok. Means in the belly or in the womb and refers to the fire within that gives birth to new life. So what is that fire in your belly? In his book titled The Rebirthing of God, Christianity's Struggle for New Beginnings, John Philip Newell says, this fire is where new life is, in the belly of the earth, in the belly of the human soul. It is not yet seen, but it is stirring. Before long, it will try to come forth among us as a new birth, with a vulnerability that needs protection and a sacredness that calls for celebration. A new era has begun, and a new era is emerging here at Christ Church Eureka and within our diocese, with a new bishop being consecrated in just a few weeks. And a new era is emerging within the wider Episcopal Church and within the Christian church in general. It is not yet seen, but it is stirring. We are invited to help give birth to this new era by trusting in abundance and practicing creative hospitality like Brigid, the patron saint of midwives, and by gathering together as a warm and loving community, guided by our instinct for oneness and by the love of our divine Good Shepherd, who seeks to revive our souls and lead us beside those still waters. There are many sacred wells of St. Brigid in Ireland, but there is only one remaining in Scotland, and it is on the island of Iona. The Good Shepherd Sunday readings this morning include this image of still waters and the springs of the water of life. In Gaelic, water of life is ushkaba, ushkaba. This image reminds me of my last visit, my last day in Iona, to St. Brigid's Well. It's also called the Well of Eternal Youth. St. Brigid's Well on Iona, where the wind was blowing strong and the water was stirring. And at this sacred well, I prayed for all of you. And I asked God to give birth to new life among us, as he is already doing. I'm not sure exactly what that new birth and new life will mean, but I'm looking forward to finding out. O God, whose Son Jesus is the good shepherd of your people, grant that when we hear his voice, we may follow where he leads, who with you and the Holy Spirit lives and reigns, one God, forever and ever. Amen.